Look, there's a quiet financial trap that almost nobody warns you about. And the scary part is, it doesn't look dangerous at all. It looks normal. It looks responsible. It even looks successful. It's the car payment trap. My name is Daniel, and I spend way too much time thinking about money psychology, especially the small decisions that feel harmless but slowly reshape your entire financial life without you even noticing. And the car payment is one of the biggest examples of that. Because no one wakes up one day and says, I want to lock myself into a long-term financial obligation that silently eats my future cash flow. That's not how it happens. It happens emotionally. It happens socially. It happens quietly. You walk into a dealership, you see a car that feels like an upgrade, it smells new, it looks clean, it feels like progress. And then the salesperson doesn't talk about the total price. They talk about the monthly payment. That's the first psychological shift. Not, this car costs $38,000, but this is only $589 a month. Only. That word does a lot of damage. Here's the thing. Our brains are wired to process monthly numbers more comfortably than large lump sums. $500 a month feels manageable. $38,000 feels heavy. So the entire conversation is framed in a way that lowers your mental resistance. And this is where it gets interesting. Because people don't buy cars based on affordability anymore. They buy cars based on monthly tolerance. Now think about this for a second. If someone makes $4,500 a month after taxes, a $600 car payment feels doable. Not comfortable, not smart, but doable. And that tiny mental justification is enough to move forward. But what they don't think about is the chain reaction. Insurance goes up. Fuel costs increase. Maintenance for newer or higher-end models is higher. Registration costs more. And suddenly, that $600 payment is actually costing $850 to $1,000 a month in real life. Quietly. Every single month. Here's a real-life scenario that happens more often than people admit. Someone gets a raise. Maybe they go from making $50,000 to $65,000. Psychologically, they feel like they've leveled up. And the first lifestyle upgrade they consider is a car. Not investments, not emergency savings, not debt reduction. A car. Because cars are visible success. You can't park your investment portfolio in your driveway, but you can park a brand new SUV. And that visibility matters more than logic in most financial decisions. Now here's where the trap gets deeper. Interest rates. Most people don't fully understand how auto loan interest stretches the cost of their car over time. They focus on approval, not cost structure. They celebrate getting approved instead of analyzing what they're agreeing to. Let's say you finance a $40,000 car at 7% interest for 72 months. Your monthly payment might look reasonable, around $680 to $700, depending on terms. But over 6 years, you're not paying $40,000. You're paying closer to $48,000 to $50,000 total. That's nearly an extra $10,000 just for the privilege of paying slowly. And most people never emotionally feel that extra $10,000 because it's spread over 72 small payments. That's the psychological trick of long loan terms. Lower monthly pain, higher long-term cost. This is where money psychology becomes uncomfortable, because the dealership is not optimizing for your financial future. They're optimizing for deal approval. The longer the loan term, the lower the monthly payment. The lower the monthly payment, the easier it is for you to say yes. And once you say yes, the trap begins quietly. Now think about the timing of most car purchases. New job, life milestone, family growth, social comparison. Rarely is it purely logical. It's emotional with a financial justification layered on top. This car is reliable. I need something safer. I deserve something nicer. And sometimes those reasons are valid, but the financial structure behind them is often ignored. Here's the reality check nobody likes to talk about. A car payment is not just an expense, it's a cash flow restriction. Let's do simple math. Imagine you have a $650 car payment for 6 years. That's $7,800 per year. Over 6 years, that's $46,800 of after-tax money leaving your life. Now think about this. If instead, even half of that, let's say $300 a month, was consistently invested in a basic index fund averaging 7% annually, after 6 years, you'd have roughly $26,000 to $28,000. Instead, most people end the same 6 years with a depreciated asset worth maybe $15,000 to $20,000, depending on the vehicle. And depreciation is the silent villain in this story. Because unlike a house or an investment, a car is almost guaranteed to lose value over time, especially in the first 3 to 5 years. Yet people finance it like it's a long-term asset. That mismatch alone creates financial drag. Here's the thing that makes this trap even more subtle. Normalization. Everyone around you has a car payment. Friends, coworkers, neighbors, social media influencers. It becomes the financial default. So you stop questioning it. It feels like a normal adult expense, like rent or utilities, but it's not mandatory. It's a choice that became culturally normalized. And once something feels normal, your brain stops analyzing it critically. This is where it gets interesting again. Loan length inflation. Years ago, 36 and 48-month car loans were common. Now, 60, 72, and even 84-month loans are being offered regularly. Not because cars suddenly got cheaper, but because longer terms make expensive cars feel affordable on paper. An $800 payment becomes $580. A $580 payment becomes reasonable, but you're locked in longer. And life changes faster than loan terms. People change jobs, people move, people have emergencies. People's priorities shift, but the car payment stays consistent, relentless, predictable, non-negotiable. And psychologically, fixed payments create background stress even if you don't consciously think about them daily. Now let's talk about the refinancing and trade-in cycle. This is the part nobody talks about enough. Someone buys a car with a 72-month loan. 2 years later, they want an upgrade. But the car has depreciated faster than the loan balance, so they're upside down, meaning they owe more than the car is worth. What happens next? They roll the negative equity into a new loan. Now their new car payment includes old debt from a previous car. That is the financial equivalent of stacking obligations silently. And the scary part is, dealerships make this process feel smooth, easy, convenient. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. Of course they will, because the loan just gets bigger and longer. Now think about the emotional side again. Driving a nicer car gives short-term satisfaction, status validation, comfort, pride. But payments create long-term financial rigidity, and rigidity limits opportunity. Imagine 2 people earning the same income. Person A has a $750 car payment. Person B drives a paid-off used car. That's a $9,000 annual difference in cash flow. In 5 years, that gap alone could become a down payment on property, a business investment, or a fully funded emergency fund. But instead, for many people, that $9,000 disappears into depreciation and interest, quietly, every year. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Car payments make lifestyle inflation feel harmless because it's structured. You don't feel like you're overspending. You feel like you're managing a payment. That framing changes behavior completely. You wouldn't casually spend $35,000 in cash, but you will agree to $600 a month. Same financial weight, different psychological packaging. Now here's the reality check most people avoid. Affording a car payment is not the same as comfortably sustaining it. You can technically afford something and still damage your financial flexibility. And flexibility is one of the most underrated financial advantages in adulthood. Because emergencies don't ask if your car payment is due. Opportunities don't pause because your monthly obligations are high. Stress doesn't reduce just because the car looks impressive in your driveway.
Look, this doesn't mean car payments are evil or that financing a vehicle is always a bad decision. That would be unrealistic. For many people, reliable transportation is necessary. The issue isn't the existence of a car payment, it's the size of it relative to your income and long-term goals. This is where calm, honest math matters more than emotion. A simple guideline many financially stable individuals follow, quietly, is keeping total car costs under 10 to 15% of monthly take-home income, not just the loan, total cost. Because once it crosses that range, the payment starts competing with investing, saving, and life flexibility. And that competition creates financial tension over time. Now think about your own situation honestly, not emotionally, not socially, financially. If your income stopped for 3 months, how stressful would your car payment feel?
That question alone reveals whether the payment is manageable or psychologically heavy. Here's the deeper money psychology layer most people never articulate. Cars are identity purchases, not just transportation decisions. They reflect how people see themselves or how they want to be seen. And identity spending is always harder to control because it feels personal, not financial. That's why logical advice like buy a cheaper car often doesn't emotionally resonate. It feels like a downgrade in identity, not just a financial adjustment. But long-term wealth is usually built through invisible discipline, not visible upgrades. Quiet decisions create loud financial outcomes later. If this perspective is making you rethink how you view monthly payments in general, that alone is a powerful shift, because awareness usually comes before better financial behavior. And here's the actionable insight most people overlook. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this monthly payment?" a more powerful question is, "What is this payment costing me in future flexibility?" That single mental shift changes everything, because you stop evaluating comfort today and start evaluating options tomorrow. Maybe that means choosing a slightly used car instead of brand new. Maybe that means a shorter loan term. Maybe that means delaying the upgrade by 1 year while strengthening savings. None of those decisions are flashy, but financially they are extremely strategic. And over time, strategy compounds quietly, just like interest does. Look, the car payment trap nobody talks about isn't about cars themselves. It's about how easily structured monthly obligations sneak into your life and slowly reshape your financial trajectory without feeling dramatic. It doesn't feel like a crisis. It feels like a normal bill. But normal bills, repeated for years, become powerful financial forces. So the next time you see a monthly payment framed as only, pause for a second and zoom out. Not just 6 months, not just 1 year, the full term, the full cost, the full psychological impact on your cash flow and decisions. Because once you start seeing payments as long-term commitments instead of short-term conveniences, your financial decisions become calmer, clearer, and far more intentional. And honestly, that level of clarity is rare. So I'm curious, when you think about your current or future car payment, do you see it as transportation or as a long-term financial trade-off?